I'd like to welcome everyone. My name is Vincent Russo. I'm with the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics in the U.S. and welcome you to this side event for the 55th session of the Statistical Commission. The topic, the theme today is classifying our world, recent developments in international statistical classifications. I'm here today on behalf of Andrew Hancock, who chairs the UN Committee of Experts on International Statistical Classifications. I'm a member also of the bureau of that committee, and you will see in the 5 presentations today some of the work that the committee has done and reviewed over the last year, and we're very excited to be able to present quite a variety of themes as well on a variety of different domains. So we are eager to share with you some of the highlights that will of classifications that will come before the Statistical Commission. I'll note too that the all of the presentations and the background documents for related to these topics are on the UNSD website, and the background documents are on the Statistical Commission's website, and available through UNSD. The presentations of today's presentations are also available there as well. I will begin with a presentation on the Standard International Energy Classification. Give me just a moment to bring up that presentation. Okay. So the Standard International Energy Classification is embedded within the international recommendations for energy statistics. It is the 3rd chapter in that, and the CIEC, as I'll refer to it, is a multi-purpose classification, and it is intended to be relevant internationally and cover all the products that are needed to give a comprehensive view of energy production, transformation, and consumption. So it serves quite a lot of different purposes, and it also is essential for facilitating comparison internationally in energy statistics. It also helps, provides a hierarchical system for organizing and coding that data. The revision process was very much a global effort. We had representatives from 14 different countries and 11 international organizations that provided expertise and perspective during this revision. The task team met regularly, and we also had smaller group discussions on specific topics with subject matter experts. So it was a very extensive consultation. The revision began in 2022, so we're 4 years into it, and pleased to be in position to present to the Statistical Commission the CIEC 2.0 in the next month or so. We are still we had targeted last Statistical Commission, the previous Commission in 2025 as our target, but we needed some additional time, and so we're presenting it now. The initial consultation that we conducted a few years ago resulted in 18 issues. We picked up a few more along the way, but these were the issues that emerged from that initial consultation. Some of them were interrelated as well, and not all of them necessarily resulted in changes to the classification. but you will see that there's generally an emphasis on improving coverage of renewable sources, and distinguishing between renewable, non-renewable energy and fuels. In terms of the structure and some of the key changes in the from a high level, we SEAC will remain a four-level structure. So there's sections, divisions, groups, and classes at the lowest level. You'll see that we expanded the number of sections at the top level of the structure from 10 to 12. So this necessitated changing the coding pattern to introduce alphanumeric characters, and so sections are now identified by letters, and this is similar type of rubric as we see in the ISIC classification of industrial activities. The number of classes significantly expanded from 52 classes to 159. So there's quite a bit more detail in the structure, and my goal today is to highlight some of those key changes. You'll see that there were changes in biofuels, both the solid biofuels and liquid and gaseous biofuels. This was driven, particularly in the case of solid biofuels, by a desire to align and improve our alignment with the FAO data collection tools. So they contributed significantly to the disaggregation of our solid biofuels. And we also saw quite a bit of an expansion in our detail for liquid and gaseous biofuels as well. We also addressed waste, and I'll show in the next slide some details there. We also have significantly disaggregated electricity and heat to focus more on the sources of energy used to produce heat and electricity. And we also introduced some new categories, new sections, one for cold and one for hydrogen and derived synthetic fuels. So I'll go into a little bit more detail on some of these highlights. For waste, the original SEAC 1.0 really had only two categories for waste, industrial and municipal, and neither one of them really captured the essence of waste as an energy product per se. So in the revision, we now disaggregate waste by in two ways. First, between waste that's used directly as an energy source, so solid post-consumer waste and industrial products that are directly consumed for energy. And then a second category for energy products that are derived from waste and byproducts. So two different a different orientation of the waste category, oriented more closely around the energy characteristics. And then within these two categories, we have broken out by biogenic and non-biogenic material. So this gets at the the renewable, non-renewable concept a little bit there. So it's a very different orientation for the treatment of waste within the SEAC. For oil and oil products, we also saw some additional changes here. Notably, we are discontinuing the use of the reference of conventional crude oil in the title. We now refer to just oil. The conventional concept really was more subjective, and so now we're referring in different ways to the different types of oil. So we have an expansion of the crude oil types here. And you'll see under D2 here, crude oil is now broken out into five different categories, roughly in order of process and degree of processing. So starting with bitumen, which is more of a crude product, going down to synthetic crude oil, which is obviously a much more significantly processed product. We also eliminated the there was a section, a separate section in SEC 1.0 for oil shale and oil sands. Oil shale has now moved under oil, and oil sands were removed because it is not really recognized as an energy product per se. Is more of a geologic condition, and it is the oil sands are really not produced or consumed in that sense. They're just further processed into the bitumen is the product that comes out of oil sands. In electricity, we have quite a big expansion of electricity within SEC. Previously, there was just a single category for electricity. It is now broken out into 7 different divisions that are aligned with the sources. So we have non-combustible renewable, combustible renewable, and fossil fuels, waste, nuclear, synthetic, and so forth. So it's quite a significant expansion of the coverage and by type of source for electricity. And even with all these categories, countries are can still align and compare electricity at a top level across the statistics, because electricity remains a section unto itself. Just to get a little bit closer look here at some of the particular changes, you can see here how in the case of electricity from non-combustible renewable sources, division G1 is broken out into again by source of the renewable energy: hydro, tide, essentially marine sources, wind, solar, geothermal. And even within those categories, at the lowest level, at the class level, in the case of solar, it is further broken out by solar from photovoltaic sources and electricity from solar thermal sources. So quite a significant expansion of classes here to facilitate analysis of renewable and non-renewable sources, which is important for policymakers. And I'll note that heat is broken down in largely along the same lines here. Heat had been, again, a single section without any disaggregation, and it is also now broken out in the same way. We had also a request to expand our coverage of charcoal to meet, this is a response to a request from the African Energy Commission. And we have disaggregated charcoal now into lump charcoal, which is basically unprocessed, and charcoal briquettes, which are a more highly processed form of charcoal. And this was an important distinction for many countries that see significant production of charcoal. One of the new categories that we introduced in this revision is for cold. There was some mixed sentiment about adding coal, which is conceptually the absence of heat, but it was deemed really important for some regions to include in the structure. And cold will be broken out in 2 ways: primary cold and secondary cold. And these concepts will be elaborated in the explanatory notes. We also introduced a new section for hydrogen and derived and synthetic fuels. This reflects innovations that have occurred in the energy space. This is still a very highly evolving area, and with the introduction of these categories, CEC remains up to date with current developments. And as we've seen a lot of interest again in policy terms and policy providing advantages to production of these types of fuels. So we want to be able to reflect that in the data and measure those developments. One of the main goals of this revision of CEC was to improve alignment with the CPC, the Central Product Classification. And we were able to make some changes in both CEC and CPC because these revisions were happening, they overlapped. There was a significant overlap between these two revisions. So in some instances, we were able to make changes in CPC to improve alignment with CEC in the area of coal and split coke and semi coke of coal. So some product areas, but we also were able to make changes in CEC to improve alignment with CPC in the areas of peat and some of the gaseous forms of energy. We weren't able to fully align, and as we went through the CEC revision process, it became apparent that CEC was still necessary as a standalone classification because the needs of energy statistics were distinct, and we saw this in the case of waste, where the previous version of CEC aligned with CPC because there were these breakouts for industrial and municipal, but that didn't really mesh with the requirements for energy statistics. The global consultation was conducted last year in July to September of last year, and the responses were overwhelmingly positive in terms of the support for the structure, and we were pleased with the geographic representation of the responses as well. For the next steps, the hope and expectation is that the Statistical Commission will endorse the CEC structure in a few weeks, and then the task team will remain active to complete the correspondence tables to align with the previous version of CEC and also the new version, recently approved version of the CPC. And writing the explanatory notes and guidance notes are still remain to be a significant effort there. So there's work that remains, but the structure is largely complete, or is complete really. So with that, I will pause and see if there's any questions, and you can put those into the chat. Okay, I'm not seeing any chatter there. So we have several other presentations, so I think maybe we will move on, and I will like to welcome then. Let me stop sharing my screen so that I may welcome Claudia Kappa to present on the UNICEF's new classification for the International Classification of Alternative Care of Children. So you can see we have the committee deals with quite a diverse set of topics, and we enjoy moving on sometimes from the economic statistics to some of the social ones, which are quite novel. So welcome, Claudia. Nice to see you.
Likewise, thank you very much, Vincent, and good morning Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to be on this webinar, and I want to express on behalf of UNICEF our gratitude to the committee of experts for giving us the opportunity to present and for assisting us through the development of this classification. So let me start by giving you a little bit of a background about the development of this classification. Starting with the rationale. As we know, children in alternative care are frequently missing in official statistics. And this for a number of reasons that were highlighted in a number of documents that were really critical to set the mandate for UNICEF to do this classification. First, the Conference of European Statisticians back in 2022, in the guidance note that was issued on children's statistics, clearly highlighted the need to have operational definitions that can assist countries in the collection of data on children in alternative care. Things that was also stressed out in the Data Care Initiative, which is a joint initiative from Eurochild and UNICEF that really aimed at reviewing the current data landscape on children in alternative care. So currently there is no international approved standards for collecting data on children in alternative care, and the iCare that I'm presenting today was developed in response to this need and gap that was clearly highlighted by member states. In developing this classification, as I mentioned earlier, we greatly benefited from the feedback that was provided to us by the expert group on statistical classification, and we tried to develop the classification according to the UN Statistics Division principle related to statistical classification. It's a process that started approximately in 2024, so we are now a year and a half into this process. We started with the preparation of a draft that we shared for then consultation. We were lucky to build on the expertise of a number of different experts. In particular, the first draft was drafted with inputs from about 30 child protection and child care experts and academics from different countries in the world. This document then in February of 2025 was sent out for a global online country consultation with national statistical authorities, line ministry, and regional organizations. This country consultation process involved over 40 different national statistical offices and took place between May and June of 2025. This was then followed by a multi-country pilot, which involved 9 countries that were invited also to participate in a workshop that took place in Florence in October. And then the draft classification was reviewed by the UN Committee for Statistical Classification, and hopefully will be presented to the Statistical Commission in March for consideration. I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the variety and the number of statistical offices that join us, express interest in joining us in the development of this classification. You see here the 40 countries and institutions that express interest in being part of this consultative process, with countries that are in statistical office involved being those who played a particularly active role in reviewing the various drafts of the classification, but also in participating in the pilots. Just to name a few, I really would like to express my gratitude to the National Institute for Social Protection of Serbia, and the Turkish Statistical Institute, the Central Bureau of Statistics of Latvia, the General Authority of Statistics of Saudi Arabia, and so on and so forth. And I just mentioned a few just to give you also a sense of the diversity of expertise and geography that we're all really committed to providing inputs to the classification. Let me now go into the definitions and a little bit on the structure of the international classification of alternative care for children. Starting with the definition of alternative care that we landed on refers to the care of a child by person or persons other than the parents, when the parents is or are unable or unwilling to care for their children, or abandon or relinquish the child or the children. So alternative care can be formal or informal and might be provided on a short basis or long-term basis. So as you can see, there are different elements to this classification that have to be considered in consideration of the different type of arrangements and practices that exist in countries all over the world. So there are at least three key elements of the definition. First of all, the care of a child refers to meeting the children's needs, including physical, cognitive, and social-emotional needs. Plus, there is an element of protecting children from danger, violence, and exploitation. This has to be an ongoing process that can be deployed over a short period or a long period, but this ongoing element of the care is really critical to meet children's needs. Then obviously, the definition is built on the concept of parents, who refer to those who contributed biologically to creating a child who legally acquire parental status. And a critical component of this definition is the lack of ability to care for a child. And this lack of ability can be the result of personal conditions, including death, for instance, or illness, as well as contextual conditions, poverty, natural disaster, and obviously this take into consideration the fact that parents might have the means, knowledge, and access to services, but they are still unable to take care of a child. The unit of classification is the alternative care arrangement. So it's not the child. Why? Because a single child might have several different alternative care arrangements over a certain period of time. So the unit of classification is the alternative care arrangement. But of course, then when aggregating these numbers can be aggregated at the care arrangement level or also at the individual child level, depending on the type of calculations and numbers we are aiming to produce. The alternative care arrangement refers to the selection of caregivers and a care setting for a child in need of alternative care. Then we further go down the road by defining caregivers and care settings, because as you can see, these are the two elements that are critical to define the parameters of an alternative care arrangement. So one thing that I also wanted to mention is that the classification also defines the parameter and the boundaries of what is included and what is not, but obviously this requires much more conversation, and the classification is up on the website of the Statistical Commission where it can be accessed in its draft form. Just a quick overview of the structure. There are three levels: first level categorization, family-based alternative care, residential-based alternative care, and independent living. And under each one of these individual level 1 category, there are level 2 category that are displayed here. There are 3 for each one of the level 1 category, with additional definitions provided, as well as taxonomies that give an illustration of some concrete manifestations. The classification also includes disaggregating variables that are classified in tiers. The only indispensable variable is considered the age of the child, of the individual while in care, because this will allow us to distinguish between children and adult. Then we have a tier 2 level of disaggregation, which is considered minimum, and include a number of variables, including, for instance, the disability status of the child, the parental status of the child, for instance, as well as characteristics that pertain to the caregivers, the care arrangement, or the facilities in case of residential care. So as you can see here, these are illustrated in orange. And then you have additional variables that would be good to have for analytical purposes, but are not considered critical. And I want to conclude with obviously some consideration related to the goals for implementation. We know that putting out a classification is not the end of a process is actually the beginning of an even more important one, which has to do with the uptake of the classification and the integration into statistical systems. Obviously, we expect this implementation to be gradual. So I was told by those in the expert group who have been doing this work for a long time that I'm in for a long road. So it's going to be 20, 30, 40 years, right? Depending on the different classification, they're still in place. So we are up for it, and we understand that obviously this will be a gradual and phased process of integration, depending on the maturity of the system, each country, the national capacity and resources, and the level of prioritization. Many countries have different levels of institutionalization, for instance, of children. So alternative care arrangements vary significantly across country, and so are the political, obviously, commitment and the policy framework. So we understand that there has to be, obviously, a gradual process of integration. And to support countries in this integration, obviously, we plan to prepare a number of different tools to support the iCare implementation, from outreach and advocacy campaign all the way to technical documents like manual, templates, and tools that can be instrumental to support countries who are willing to integrate the classification into their system. So more to come, obviously, but we start with submitting the classification next month, in a month and a few days, hoping that obviously it will be well received by member states. I want to complete my presentation, thanking you again for your attention, thanking the expert group for the possibility to present, and I will be more than happy to answer any question you might have. Thank you.
Vincent, I'm sorry, you're on mute.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you, Claudia, for the presentation, and I'll monitor the chat here for any questions for Claudia's excellent presentation and important work. But let's. I don't see any questions at the moment, so maybe we'll then move on to our next presentation on the statistical classification of dying places. And for that, I welcome Barbara Gomes from Portugal to present on this very innovative classification here to meet an important data need for the social analyses. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you, Vincent. Can you hear me okay and see the slides?
Yes.
Just to confirm. Yeah. Okay.
Nice
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today to present the International Classification of Dying Places. We call it ICP. The classification was developed as part of a research project called EOL in Place, End of Life in Place, which is funded by the European Research Council. The host institution is the University of Coimbra in Portugal, and I'm the principal investigator of the project. The dying places is the concept at the heart of the ICP. It's a key metric about life's end, as the global burden of serious health-related suffering leading to death escalates around the world, in all world regions. The question of where people die and where people receive end-of-life care is crucial to ensure that support and services, including palliative care, are in place where they ought to be. So dying places really comprise two things. They comprise the places of death and the places of care at life's end. A key question which is central to this issue is whether we, societies and health systems, are failing to provide choice on this matter. We know from over 200 studies that home is the most common preferred place for end-of-life care and for a place of death for both patients and their family members facing life-threatening conditions. And the second choice is often hospice facilities or palliative care facilities. These preferred places can be places where people are if the right support is available to them. However, the reality is different. We know that most people die in hospitals in many countries of the world. We know this based on death certificates or death registration information, which are monitored, which is monitored by the OECD, and also is analyzed in research. In our study, in our project, we looked at this information for 35 countries, and we found the categories used to record place of death varied widely. In the slide, you see the sheer number of categories used across countries. And 12% of all deaths we looked at from 2012 to 2021 were considered ill-defined. So this means that for 12% of deaths, we don't know where the person died. This demonstrates a clear need and clear potential to do better. In the UL in a Place project, we aim to develop a pioneering international classification of dying places, very much grounded on what these places mean for individuals, and most importantly, to patients and to their families. It's a 5-year project. It started in 2022. It ends this year. And we had our first meeting and shared the first draft of the classification with the UN Statistics Division and Andrew Hancock, chair of the Committee of Experts, in 2024. Last year, we then presented to the Committee of Experts, who approved the classification and recommended submission to the Statistical Commission for endorsement. So I'm really delighted to be here today presenting a DECIDE event ahead of the Commission session in March. The ICP was developed based on evidence produced by the project. So to do that, we analyzed mortality statistics, we systematically reviewed the literature, and we conducted a series of studies in 4 contrasting countries, which are flagged in the slide. So the US, the Netherlands, Portugal, and Uganda. And we analyzed health policy documents, we interviewed key stakeholders, we followed over time a small number of families of patients, adults and minors, with life-threatening conditions and their family members over time as the disease progressed towards death, to be able to understand and capture diversity in end-of-life pathways. We also conducted a mortality follow-back survey with bereaved relatives, looking back at the last months of life of their loved ones. And more recently, we conducted focus groups with key stakeholders internationally and nationally to establish the content validity of the ICP. The ICP has a hierarchical structure. It includes 7 chapters: dwelling or domicile, health or care facility, other facility, vehicle, outdoor, and 2 residual chapters, which are called elsewhere and unknown. And each of the chapters, with the exception of the residuals, have then subcategories, and some subcategories further are further specified in subcategories as well. In addition to the chapters and categories, we defined qualifiers, which add important information about the places. And you see here in the middle of the slides, the first qualifier is an important subjective qualifier. It allows us to know whether the place was regarded by the person as their home. Answer options being yes, no, and don't know. And they apply to the 2 first chapters. The second qualifier is the most common qualifier. It applies to all chapters except residuals, and asks if the place was the person's workplace or school. And then some of the chapters have specific qualifiers as well, in particularly Chapter B, health or care facility, and Chapter D, vehicle. So I'll just briefly go through the chapters with you with some images as well to make them more visual. Chapter 1 is called dwelling or domicile, and we subdivided it into individual and collective, and with a residual category called other dwelling or domicile. And you can see, for example, if you look at individual, we then made the distinction between the person's own residence or the residence of others, which is an important distinction for people, for example, that move to the home of a family member at the end of life to be able to receive care by them. Chapter B is health or care facility, and in here you see some important specifications as well. So for example, within hospital, we specified some locations, for example, emergency department. This is a place where, which is rarely captured in place of death categories, which we saw in the 35 countries we analyzed. Only 3 had emergency department as place of death. 13% of all deaths in Portugal take place in emergency departments, for example. The other countries that used this category were the US and South Africa. But you then see other places in this chapter, including long-term care facilities or nursing homes, palliative care facilities, hospice facilities, and primary care settings as well. In the qualifiers, I would highlight some as well. They allow us to understand whether the person was in the pediatric or in a psychiatric setting, whether the person was in a corridor or a waiting area, for example. Chapter C captures other facilities. These are places where people go or stay, but not to receive care. And they comprise places such as hotels, recreational or cultural facilities, schools, and sports facilities, for example, amongst others. Chapter D, they allow us to identify whether the person was or is in a vehicle. And in here, we felt it was important to specify ambulances. And in the qualifiers, you also see that we ask whether the person was being transported to or from a health or care facility. Chapter E comprises outdoor open-air spaces like the street, the sea, forests or desert, for example, among others. And then the 2 last residual categories. So the ICP was shared with over 200 people from 61 countries with whom we consulted. We did 2 face-to-face consultations, one in Helsinki, one in Gaborone in Botswana, the latter as part of the African Palliative Care Conference. We also did several online consultations involving statistical agencies, involving associations of patients, associations of informal carers, and we shared the classification with the participants. We asked them to consider translation issues, the appropriateness to their culture. We also presented them with case studies and asked them to apply the classification and share their experience with us. The overwhelming majority said that the ICP is fit for purpose as international standards, and they would use and recommend others to use the classification. In this slide, you see the strengths of the classification as written by the people participating in the consultations. The most important is comprehensive, which indicates the ICP is exhaustive. Other characteristics are the clarity, the standardization, the simplicity, but also the detail and the logic of coding as well were highlighted. People valued the usefulness to improve care and the policy utility, saying it allows individuals to exercise their right and it fits most communities. So thinking about implementation and maintenance of the ICP, we see 2 target utilizations. The ICP can be used in administrative data about deaths and care to improve this data. And in here, we are thinking especially about death certificates and clinical records. Secondly, the ICP can also be used in surveys to generate statistical data, and we have used that in the mortality followback survey of bereaved relatives that we have conducted as part of the UL in Place project. Statistical agencies are central to both these utilizations, so we're really pleased to be able to engage 37 statistical agencies in our consultation who helped us improve the classification as well into what it is now, its final form. We foresee that the ICP will be regularly updated as new places emerge that are relevant for death and dying globally. And we see that as an opportunity to improve it in the future, learning with the implementation uptake, the challenges, but also the successes and the lessons learned. Several people have helped shape the ICP so far, the participants in our studies and consultations, and we thank them. The advisory boards, which includes Andrew Hancock, representatives of international patient and carer organizations, leading researchers, policymakers. All of our research team members contributed to the ICP. We deeply thank the UN Committee of Experts and the Statistical Division, and we now thank you too.
Thank you, Barbara, for that. I shared this with Barbara when this first came on the agenda for the committee of experts. That when I first saw it, I thought, oh, this is interesting about geography and maybe places that are depopulating and you know, maybe dying places. But I was happy to see that that it was actually quite a different thing. So if you were perhaps others had that same reaction when they first saw it. So we see quite a bit of quite a variety of topics come through. So there I'm just looking at, there's one comment from Salim asking about some correspondence from last month about the structural suggestions there. So I'll let Barbara have a look at that. If you can you see that, Barbara?
Yeah, I can see that, and thank you very much. We considered quite carefully all the suggestions, and actually we made 4 changes, and one of them was coding improvements. And thank you so much for the suggestions, Salim, which we followed. So I'm happy to reply to your email with the feedback as well. You can see that as well in the report that we submitted as part of the platform for the event. But I'll reply to you. Thank you.
There's also a question from Don in Ireland about the engagement process, and you know, were families engaged, you know, families experiencing end of life situations, and or bereaved families. You can comment on that.
Yes, we did both. We actually engaged associations with a focus on international associations of patients and families, and national in our 4 target countries. But we also conducted research directly with the patients and with the family members in our qualitative serial interviews and through the mortality followback survey. So yes, we did both. Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. I think, let me just make sure. Yeah, that's it. All right, let's turn now to trade statistics and the changes that are the revision process for the EBOPS, the extended balance of payments classification. And for this, I'll turn it over to Nancy Snyder from UNSD. Hi, Nancy.
Sorry about mute there. Okay, great. Can you see my screen that I'm sharing?
We do. Just if you want to, if you can get it, there you go. Great.
There. Okay,
looks,
great.
Looks good.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Nancy Snyder. I'm from the UN Statistics Division in the Trade Statistics section, and I'll be walking you through the revision to the Extended Balance of Payments 2026 classification. It's called EBOPS for short, so you'll hear that a lot through the presentation. Here's just an outline of some of the topics. We'll go through sort of a background on what EBOPS is and what the revision cycle is typically based on, the objectives and guiding principles that were used for this current revision, the structure of the new EBOPS itself, main changes from the previous version, EBOPS 2010, and the global consultation that was conducted for EBOPS, which is also part of the publication of the Manual of Statistics on International Trade and Services 2026, which is also being submitted as a background document to the Statistical Commission. I'm also making this presentation on behalf of the Task Team on International Trade Statistics, which is part of the UN Committee of Experts on Business and Trade Statistics. That task team is chaired by Cristina Neves from Portugal and Uljour Hossein from Morocco. So we thank them for their leadership during this revision process. Okay, so what is EBOPS? Some of you may know that it serves as the basis to collect, compile, and disseminate international trade and services statistics. So it is published as part of the internationally agreed upon framework presented in the Manual on Statistics of International Trade and Services, MSITS for short. EBOPS is also really an extension of the services components that is presented in the International Monetary Fund's Balance of Payments Manual. So it is an extension with added granularity from those services components. EBOPS also serves as a bridge between these macro level BPM components and the more detailed products in the Central Product Classification, or CPC. Here's just a really brief snapshot of what EBOPS looks like. There's actually 17 main components, but as you see, it goes down into some detail for each category, and really does include a lot of extra granularity in this revision versus the previous EBOPS 2010 version. Okay, so why is EBOPS being revised? So EBOPS follows the revision cycles of the other macroeconomic statistical frameworks, especially the System of National Accounts, SNA, and the BPM updates. So accordingly, EBOPS was revised this time to fully align with the recent revisions in those frameworks, in particular the 7th edition of BPM, BPM7 for short, and the 2025 SNA. So EBOPS 2026 is fully consistent with the BPM7 standard service components, but it does introduce further subcategories, as I'll be showing in a bit. And again, as I mentioned, the Task Team on International Trade Statistics under the UN Committee of Experts on Business and Trade Statistics developed EBOPS 2026 as part of the MSITS 2026 drafting process, which is being submitted as a background document. At its annual meeting last year, the UN Committee of Experts on International Statistical Classifications approved EBOPS 2026 as an international statistical classification, which we are happy about. And just to note, the past versions of EBOPS 2002 and EBOPS 2010 are also in the family of international classifications. And also, importantly, in relation to the CPC, as a new recommendation, MSITS 2026 is recommending that compilers compile statistics on international trade and services in both EBOPS 2026 and CPC version 3 as a longer-term goal. Again, EBOPS sort of acts like a bridge between macro components and these micro CPC products. So EBOPS 2026 aligns with CPC version 3 to the extent possible. It's worth noting EBOPS is not purely a product classification. There are some transactor-based items such as travel, which of course would be conducted by international visitors, construction, and goods and services supplied by government, which can be cross-cutting in nature. So if the CPC is updated, there may be minor updates to EBOPS along the way. Major revisions to CPC will, of course, result in more updates to EBOPS. So what were the objectives and guiding principles in this revision process? First, needed to adapt to the new first level BPM-7 breakdowns, also adding additional granularity and visibility on specific items, especially that were important for SNA purposes and policy relevant items. So what does that mean? We added a new international property product on data and databases. And this improved alignment with the SNA and facilitates classification of the international transactions and IP products into different end uses, into capital formation, intermediate consumption, and final consumption. And of course, all of the above was done keeping an eye on the CPC and ensuring alignment. So here's just a snapshot of the BPM-7 services components to give you an idea of all the different service categories that are covered. And again, EBOPS is a disaggregated subsystem of the BPM-7. And it does share all these same 17 main BPM-7 components. So from the previous BPM-6 version, BPM-7 now has new first level splits. It breaks out telecommunications services from computer and information services, and also splits of other business services into several different items. We have professional management consulting services, technical and other business services, for instance. And there's a new main component for non-financial intermediation services. For those of you familiar with EBOPS 2010, this was formerly called trade-related services, but now it's its own separate category. So several of the components did not see a change in structure or scope, and these are listed here. Manufacturing services, maintenance and repair services, transport, insurance and pension, telecommunications services, research and development services, operating leasing, and government goods and services. So this helps align with the previous classification to the extent possible. But these are the items that do have some change in structure or scope even, and additional breakdowns. So this is travel, construction, financial services, charges for the use of intellectual property, computer and information services, professional and management consulting services, non-financial intermediation, technical and other business services, and personal, cultural, and recreational services. So I'm going to go through some of these key changes that we'd like to highlight. So importantly for financial services, there's an enhanced detail and granularity, which is meant to align with the CPC version 3 breakdowns, covering brokerage, investment banking, credit-related advisory, and custody services. And so these are also further split into explicitly charged services, as well as implicit services on loans and deposits. That was formerly called FISM, Financial Intermediation Services, indirectly measured. It's kind of a mouthful, but now it's called implicit services on loans and deposits. For intellectual property charges, there is a new category for licensed to reproduce or distribute data and databases. Again, this is to better align with BPM-7, SNA, and CPC. And as I mentioned, it provides an alternative breakdown by end use for national accounts purposes. So computer and information services, this component was split off from telecommunications as its own category, and it covers computer software, and there is an of which line item for software originals. It also identifies cloud computing and IT infrastructure provisioning services separately. And trying to keep up with the times, the crypto asset validation and mining services are included here under computer services, but they are not separately identified, but they are covered in this category. The news agency services has also been merged into other information services. So the non-financial intermediation category, again, this is a split in the BPM-7 main categories. It used to be under other business services. formerly called trade-related services. And this breakdown is fully in line with CPC. And this category includes things like fees and commissions for intermediation of goods, services, and non-produced assets. There's also complementary groupings presented as part of EBOPS 2026. So for various analytical purposes, compilers may wish to aggregate transactions on some of these areas of particular interest that are listed here. And for each of these complementary groupings, we've compiled a list of the services and possibly goods that would be included in each of these items. So it might draw from service or goods items from different sections of EBOPS to come up with these complementary groupings. So there was a lot of technical discussions among the task team on international trade statistics, TTITS, over the past couple of years through various meetings and consultations. And the task team recently did complete the draft MSIT's 2026 publication, which includes EBOPS 2026 as part of it in an annex. This was circulated for global consultation in October 2025. And happy to report that the results from that global consultation were overwhelmingly positive, especially regarding the additional granularity that EBOPS 2026 presents. And the white cover version of MSIT's 2026, including EBOPS, is being submitted as a background document this year at the Statistical Commission. So the way forward, we have given thought to the implementation of MSITs and EBOPS 2026. Importantly, there is an interagency task force on capacity building on international trade statistics, which is comprised of international organizations, especially OECD and World Trade Organization, which will be leading that up. They will coordinate the implementation and capacity building, but it will be also delivered and facilitated by members of the task team on international trade statistics. So here's just a listing of what we plan to deliver. The preparation of live compilation guidance notes for MSITs and EBOPS that will be available dynamically online. Interactive e-learning courses, which we're actually working on developing now, regional training workshops, technical assistance missions, preparation of related complementary technical materials, and sharing of country practices. For those that might not be aware, there's an online global repository of country practices provided by the UN Committee of Experts on Business and Trade Statistics. And we're hoping to add a lot of good country examples and best practices there. So that is that's all I have for today. You can reach out with any questions or always contact us here at tradestat@un.org. Thanks. I'll pass it back to you, Vincent.
Thank you, Nancy. I'll just check the chat here, and then there was so for you may remember last year the CPC was endorsed. The revised CPC was endorsed by the Statistical Commission, and we can there's a lot of references to alignment with CPC there, and we seems a good time to mention that we're working on the some of the correspondence for that in UNSD, and that will be the background documentation is available on the UNSD website for highlighting the changes in that version of CPC. So okay, I don't see any comments that have gone unaddressed in the chat. So let's move on then to our final presentation on the classification of statistical activities by Chuan Zhuan, Jerry, as we know him. I'll pass it over to you, Jerry.
Thank you, Vincent. And hello, everyone. Let me share my screen here up on my presentation. So my name is yes, like pronounced by Vincent 志远前 Jerry, and I thank you, Vincent.
Try.
Yes, try it. And I work at the United Nations Statistical Division, and it's good to see like so many people here like are interested in classification. So as CSA is the last for today, but not the least, classification of statistical activities. This is the outline of my presentation on the CSA. As some of you are probably familiar with CSA, but for those that are not yet familiar, what is CSA? CSA, classification of statistical activities, is an analytical classification that can be used to classify statistical activities such as data collection, processing, dissemination, capacity development, statistical events, working groups. Yes, in short, everything that the National Statistical Office is doing, yes, in their scope of work. And what can the CSA do? The classification of statistical activities can be used as a reference leading to better harmonization in structuring information across about activities of like statistical organizations at the national level, regional level, and even at the global level for dissemination of websites and for publications, etc. For example, the very website of USD uses the CSA to organize the classification. We have like on our website the international family of classifications that organizes like more than 100 classifications by the categories of the CSA. So in short, we are using CSA. CSA is a classification that can be used to classify classifications. Interesting. So at this moment, USD, we are the current custodian of CSA, responsible for this like maintenance and update. As a matter of fact, we coordinated on the last update process of the CSA from CSA 2.0 to 2.1. Which was mandated by the Statistical Commission at its 56th session in March 2025 due to the user needs for a specific domain, which I will touch upon later. The update process was carried out by the Bureau of the United Nations Committee of Experts on International Statistical Classification in close collaboration with the expert group on food security and nutritional data and statistics. And this latest version of CSA, CSA version 2.1, was developed by the UNSD, yes, as the custodian, as the designated custodian, in response to user requests for a more prominent place in its structure for food security and nutrition. And the proposal for change was jointly prepared by the Food and Agricultural Organization, the United Nations Children's Fund, and World Health Organization. Some of the experts are already here with us. And what has been changed from CSA 2.0 to CSA 2.1? The major change is a new category, a new statistical activity with the code 511. This is about food security and nutrition. This was like a newly created at the second level in CSA 2.1. And it has like two lower categories, two child categories at the third level with the code 51101 with the description of food availability and access, and with the code 51102 with the description, with the code descriptor diets and nutrition. And these new categories, these three new categories, like was also like supplemented by the expert notes in the different part of the category to clarify this is a conceptual move away from the relevant content from agriculture to this new category on food security. So because the user feedback was that food security is a distinct concept from agriculture. So we updated the expert notes to include food security and nutrition from the existing category for agriculture with the code 20321. And also, yes, after we made these changes, we proposed those changes. What are the users' feedback? So this latest revision, this latest version of CSA 2.1 is a limited update. Other than the changes that I mentioned in the previous slide, no major changes in other parts of the CSA structure. The scope of change is strictly confined to the standalone categories and the 511 as introduced before. And we also checked with the users, with all our stakeholders from the national statistical offices all over the world. We conducted a global consultation last year from April to May. And all the national statistical offices were invited to review and comment on this new draft CSA and the proposed changes. Okay, so the result was positive, overall positive. A total of 82 responses from 69 countries and 9 international organizations, and over 90% of respondents, they approved the change. They agreed with the new CSA structure. This level of percentage is quite high. And over the 96, even better, of the respondents agreed with the proposed changes from CSA 2.0 to CSA 2.1. So yes, we are on the right track. So this is quite positive feedback. And also approximately 47.6% of the respondents indicated that their office has either used or evaluated CSA in their work program. About half of them, right? We hope the other half can also catch on and start using the CSA. And over 52% of respondents indicated that their office has planned to adopt the CSA in their future work. The UN website of the International Family of Classification is organized according to CSA. This is an example on the use case of the CSA, demonstrating its power and usefulness. You can click on it and take a look. And also, key comments and follow-up actions that we received from the global consultation. General agreement with the changes, as mentioned before. And following the global consultation, the expert note for the newly created statistical activities on food security and nutrition and the subcategory was updated to improve its clarity, incorporating feedback received on these categories. These are the changes. You can see the full draft of those changes and expert notes in the draft CSA manual, CSA 2.1 manual that we submitted and is now published on the UNSD website as one of the background documents for the upcoming UNSC. And also other comments, as usual, we received a variety of comments on and suggestions how to improve the CSA. Yes, we acknowledge receipt and we thank those who commented on the CSA. Nevertheless, since the update, we have the mandate to update the CSA to address the user needs. Remember, on the food security, this update of CSA 2.1 is quite limited. It's limited to the inclusion of the new domain on food security and nutrition. And other concepts, other comments and suggestions, we acknowledge received them, but then we didn't consider them for this round. Instead, they will be documented and to be included in the future research agenda if like we have to like launch the process for the next round of CSA revision, we will like open them like to for consideration by the relevant experts. So where are we now, and what are we going to do? Last year, the United Nations Committee of Experts on International Statistical Classifications, UNCISE, approved the CSA version 2.1 at its annual meeting in November 2025 and recommended its submission to the United Nations Statistical Commission for adoption. And you can see the relevant approval process prepared by Vincent again, who is here with us. And also the white cover edition, the draft version of CSA 2.1, now submitted to the United Nations Statistical Commission for endorsement at the 57th session in March 2026. As you can see on the website for the UNSC as one of the background documents. These are the links. So if you are interested, you can check with them. Yes, on the draft, the latest draft of CSA 2.1, on the development process, yes, and also on the summary of the global consultation, and on the approval process for CSA by the committee of experts. And yes, that's all. Thank you. Back to you, Vincent.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Jerry, for that presentation, and to all our presenters today. We had over 150 participants at one point here, so I think that speaks to the high level of interest in statistical classifications, and we must recognize that the classifications are foundational for statistical generation. Without classifications, we just don't have the framework for understanding data, for being able to compare data across the regions of the world, and so I think the motto of the Statistical Commission is very appropriate here. Better data, better lives, and you don't get better data without a good foundation. So and the classifications are essential to that. So kudos to the work that went into the classifications that we saw here today, and I put in the chat the link to the agenda for the Statistical Commission, and it does have these documents or documents related to these classifications, but also others. So kudos to Barbara, Claudia, Nancy, Jerry. Thank you very much for all this. I think with that, I don't see any additional questions here. Julian, did you have anything you want to finish with, or?
Yeah, thank you so much once again also for Vincent for moderating the meeting. And again, from the UNSD side as a secretary, we are also quite looking forward for the continued collaboration and your active support in order to advance the work on the international statistical classification. Thank you all once again. So back to you, Vincent. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And we'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye.